Well, President Muhammadu Buhari has signed into law the Nigeria Police Bill 2020. The president, in a memo dated September 16, 2020, communicated his assents to the bill to the National Assembly through the clerk of the legislature. The act repeals the Police Act Cap P19 laws of the Federation 2004 and provides for a more effective and well-organized police force driven by the principles of transparency and accountability in its operations and management of its resources. Well, joining me from Abuja to discuss this is a Senior Programs Officer, Police and Legal Advocacy Center in Kiru Uzodi. It's good to have you join us on the news at this time. Well, thank you for joining us. Of course, tell us before we get to some of the other sections of this law, tell us some sections of the law that is striking for you and why you think it will be able to modernize the police or give us the police that we all strive to see.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think one of the most innovative provisions of the new act is actually a security of tenure for the Inspector General of Police. So until now, there was no secure tenure for the IGP. So the IGP, served without knowing whether, he could be, hired today and fired tomorrow. So the bill, as passed by National Assembly and signed by the President, now prescribes for a 4-year tenure for the Inspector General of Police. And that's actually very important in helping the police boss to actually do long-term planning for the police and, kind of long-term visioning. So, the longest an IGP has served, I think, is 3 years. Some have served only 1 year. And what that does is, you have someone who is really not focused on doing long-term planning. I think another very important or innovative provision is, should I just say, just a set of procedural safeguards that I think citizens will find very interesting. For instance, when it comes to the exercise of the powers of the police, for search and arrest, there are now more detailed procedures on that. In the former act, it left the exercise of police powers to discretion of the officer. So those powers are actually wide. So now you have these procedural guarantees or steps that officers must take. And then there's also a new provision mandating training for officers. That's also very important because a lot of police from experts have highlighted it as a challenge. A lot of police officers are not sufficiently trained. So that's a very key provision. And I think finally, the new act is going to make it possible for the accompanying police regulations to be reviewed. In that police regulations, you have provisions that are discriminatory to women. Those are where you have the sections that says a woman who is married cannot enlist. If she's pregnant, she'll be discharged and all that. So what this act has done is that it has triggered, it will trigger a consequential review of the regulations, which contain more detailed aspects of policing. So for me, I think these are a few of the very innovative or key provisions in the newly signed act.
Well, just like some other persons have applauded the assent to the bill, this law, do you think it will be able to tackle the challenges, especially when you look at if the police is able to support the criminal justice system or the challenges of funding, recruitment, and crime scene management, if we would say that?
Well, so this act borrowed a lot of provisions. It took a lot of provisions from the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, that's the ACJA. So I think that's very, very good because what it does is it tries to harmonize the two provisions. So a lot of criminal justice procedures from the ACJA are now in tandem with the Police Act. That wasn't the case before. Then in terms of funding, there is currently a funding framework in the new act. That wasn't in the previous act. So most establishment laws usually have a funding framework. Setting up the general fund of that agency, where they says, okay, the agency can get money from appropriation, grants and all that. So that is now included in this new act. However, there is also a police trust fund act that the president had signed last year, which is supposed to, kind of take care of some of the funding challenges of the police. So I think that was a major first step in actually addressing the issues of funding. And then with this new funding framework that is incorporated into this new act, I think it's going to go a long way into addressing that issue.
Senior Programs Officer, Police and Legal Advocacy Center in Kiru Uzodi, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on the news.
Thank you very much.